So we're now going to crack on with the conference. I want to hand over to Sarah Kirkby. I remain keen actually to shine a light and be inclusive for all of the armed force community, and as such I wanted to introduce a spouse and actually a working mum, Sarah Kirkby. She is one of the regional trainers for the VCHA who covers the east of England. Sarah is a nurse, project manager and educational facilitator, as well as a member of the armed force community herself. She'll be sharing her very personal military family story with us today, which highlights the challenges that some of the armed force community can face. Over to you, Sarah.
Morning. Thank you, Guy. I'll just take control. Brilliant. Hello all, it's so wonderful to see so many of you here online today, and a thank you again, Guy, for the introduction. I've been asked today to share part of my story as a military family, and I feel very honoured to do so. Today I'm going to talk to you about my experiences as a member of the Armed Forces community and how it has impacted the various parts of my life. This is all very day-to-day stuff, but I want to share its impact on how it's on my career and my profession as a registered nurse, explore what it has meant for me as a wife and as a mother. But ultimately, I want to tie all of this into explaining how now, as the East of England regional trainer with the NHS Armed Forces Healthcare Training and Education Programme, my own lived experience will continue to impact my involvement and delivery of the project. I graduated from the University of Leeds back in 2014 with a BSc in adult nursing. My first nursing role was in Nottingham, but during this time and shortly after moving there, I felt a call back up to Leeds. A possible soldier in Catterick may have also been to answer for that. I returned to the Leeds General Infirmary, working on a very busy, fast-paced ward with long hours and lots of overtime, which meant limited chances to see that boyfriend, who was soon to become my fiancé and is now my husband. After making one weekend together in 3 months, we decided something needed to change. Little did I know back then it was going to be a good training experience for our marriage. Of course, him leaving the military wasn't an option, and so I started looking at nursing roles that would mean we had time together at weekends. I guess this was the beginning of my career, being shaped by a connection to the armed forces. Sacrifice almost sounds too grand a word, but I guess there have been many sacrifices made along the way. I gained a distinction in my postgraduate certificate in clinical assessment whilst working in Leeds, but was unable to continue the further 2 years to complete a master's as I moved up to Catterick to be with my husband. I took a band cut when moving to Bristol after he transferred and we moved to Wiltshire, and I left an incredible research job which I loved on another posting move to Essex. In 11 years, I've had 7 jobs with 4 different NHS trusts, one with the MOD and another with the third sector. And although this now means that my CV could be published as a novel, it has led to a very varied and interesting career so far. Of course, holding down a job and managing the day-to-day, as it can be for anyone, is overwhelming at times, and I think more challenging when you're away from your partner and your family. Military life isn't the easiest on a relationship, and I'm sure many of you here can relate to that statement. It was back in 2017, at what feels now the very young age of 23, that I married my husband. We still lived apart at this point, having bought a house, but living unaccompanied, mainly because it was extremely difficult for unmarried couples at this time to be issued with a military house. When I managed to secure a job after we married in Catterick, we were so excited to move into our first pad. Little did I know from now on, my life was about to be full of magnolia walls and green wire fencing. Of course, the move to Catterick happened to coincide with my husband deploying on Optosca, a UN peacekeeping tour in Cyprus for 6 months. I started a new job with the MOD and tried to integrate into a new community, which was not as easy as I thought it would be, and I did it alone. A story many military partners will be familiar with. But we needed to prioritise our future as a couple, and this at the time was the only way we could do it. We spent 2 years in Catterick before moving to Lynham and then on to Essex. Really, we've done relatively well. Some of my friends have moved 5 or 6 times in the same time frame. And to be honest, despite the multiple career moves and periods of time apart, I love being a military wife, although you will never hear me refer to myself as a dependent. But I'm so proud to be a part of this community. The moves don't necessarily get easier, but I think you get better at them. And I always promised myself on every move that I would see each new relocation as a new adventure, a new place to explore and an opportunity to make new memories. It wasn't until 2020 when the negative impacts of this transient lifestyle really hit home for us as a couple. Becoming parents was always something my husband and I had dreamed of, but we also both knew it was going to be more difficult for us due to a genetic trait in the family. In 2018, we were referred to a local genetics team when we were living in Catterick to identify what options would be available to us. Following that appointment with Leeds, we were given a plan and told that once pregnant, we were to contact our local genetics team and they would provide us with the required testing that was available to us on the NHS. And so 2 years later, in 2020, we were blessed to fall pregnant and did exactly as we were told. We rang the local genetics clinic to us in Wiltshire, where we were now living. But upon sharing our news with them, we were promptly told that their processes were completely different, and there were several things we should have done before even getting pregnant. In fact, we were made to feel that we had been completely irresponsible and were asked, why would you have not planned better for this? We felt awful and to blame for this stressful mess we were now in. We actually spent 5 whole weeks wondering whether the required testing of our baby was now even a possibility. We needed to obtain blood tests from family members. We had to arrange this with their GPs. None of the hospitals would transport the samples, and so we ended up driving up and down from Wiltshire, collecting them and dropping them off at the lab. We threw everything into it, and despite me suffering with hyperemesis as well and having multiple admissions to hospital, we powered on. Tragically, at 13 weeks, we lost our precious baby. I won't talk about that now, largely because it's too hard. But in conjunction with this, we also lost our father-in-law to COVID 3 months later. And a month after that, we were told we were moving to Essex. This was despite asking to stay in Wiltshire to continue with our treatment at the genetics clinic, and also for me to keep my job, which I loved. Many of you here will have experienced the same thing. This is day-to-day life for us. And we all know that ultimately, if they are needed in a post, you are moving, which we did. Fortunately, a transfer of care did happen when we moved to Wiltshire. When we moved from Wiltshire to Essex, and we were referred to a hospital in London. At an appointment, several months later, we decided we would try IVF. Anyone who has gone through this or known people who have gone through this will understand the rigidity of the schedule. And I was left truly terrified that the moment they found out my husband was serving, they would pull it, because due to his job, he could not be relied upon to make every appointment. In fact, we tried to conceal this information, if I'm honest, and it clearly hadn't been handed over on the referral. In hindsight, it was actually COVID restrictions that were ongoing that helped us, because for each of my appointments, I was not actually allowed to be accompanied. Looking back, that's quite sad, really, to see that having to go on my own meant less stress for us because he didn't need to be around and we didn't need to worry about that. But we carried on, as we always have done, as we always do. And despite a hard failed first cycle, we miraculously fell pregnant in 2023. Despite the difficult journey, we were so blessed to be greeted by a beautiful baby girl, and our dreams really did come true. So why am I sharing this with you? Because this is just one story from our community where you can see that the unique challenges of military life have significantly impacted a healthcare journey. I, of course, am and forever will be eternally grateful for the NHS. Ultimately, without them, we would not have our daughter. But reflecting on this story, there are things that could have been done better. And these things could have been simple, but it would have had the biggest impact. So where are we today? Well, I'm the proud mother of an almost 2-year-old who, despite her unbelievable sass, is the most resilient, emotionally intelligent little girl. I'm navigating life working full-time, as well as sometimes a full-time single parent, miles away from family. I'm managing tantrums and the separation anxiety she feels when my husband is away, as he is now. She is growing up and understanding what it means when daddy isn't here and how that makes her feel. And that, you'll all appreciate, is very hard. But what I have found so difficult since becoming a parent is the reality that the military will always come first. Unlike other jobs, for a serving person, their service has to be their first priority above all else. Knowing that regardless of what might be happening at home, the military must come first is a hard reality to swallow. And that has been my reality time and time again. I've spent many visits to the GP and sometimes to A&E with a poorly baby, completely alone, when my husband is away. Life is dictated by service, but we must remember that's not just for the person serving, it's for their family too. Recently, I sat torn on the day the promotion board was announced, with half of me hoping and praying he would pick up, and half of me hoping and praying he wouldn't, because I couldn't face a possible move, not when I just started a new job and we got our daughter finally settled into nursery. And now we're looking to live unaccompanied so that I have family support when he is away. These conflicted feelings will continue to pop up throughout military life, ones of enormous pride, but also of exhaustion from sacrifices that are continually made. It is hard, of course it is, and so many of you know this. And this isn't a woe is me ending, because I also know how lucky I am to have the life that I have, to met the people I have along the way, and to have had the jobs I've had opportunity to grow in. But most importantly, I have a family I'm so blessed to have, and the military played a huge part in all that, and all the good things I have in my life too. I'm also very lucky to be a member of this fantastic team who are, each one of them, passionate about making a difference for the armed forces community. Alongside our VCHA core team, we are championing the community and raising awareness of the challenges that they may face. In my story, I can see the 3 following things could have altered our experience entirely, and this is what we want to support staff to be aware of. Ask the question. I have never yet been asked the question as to whether I'm a part of the community. The pressure of self-identifying and the fear of consequence would have made a huge difference if someone had asked us this question. We must ask patients at each new interaction and provide them an opportunity to identify themselves should they wish to. Recording. If my status had been recorded at any point on our journey, then this would have been clear to healthcare staff and could have supported better care planning. Recording status helps with transfer of care and improves continuity, but it also may mean a member of the community does not have to repeat their story over and over. And finally, connection. Connecting our story from trust to trust in referral, but also connecting us to support. Looking at you all here today, it is obvious there is an enormous amount of support available to our community. Often it's just about connecting people to it. The NHS does an incredible job, and we see pockets of amazing practice happening across the country, and we have to remember that. But there is always an opportunity to raise the bar higher, to reduce disadvantage and unwarranted variation that this community experiences. For me, knowing all of you are here engaged and enthusiastic makes me so excited and optimistic for the future of Armed Forces healthcare, but for me more personally, for our future as a military family. Thank you for listening to me today and for giving me the time to tell my story.
Great, thank you very much, Sarah. That was an emotional roller coaster ride. Really appreciate you sharing your story, your family story.